And today we're doing one of the things that we quite often promise that we do, cutting through misinformation. Or is it misinformation? Is quite an interesting topic because Thomas Tuchel has added to discussions about Lukaku's body type. He said that in his experience, heavier players take longer to recover. And this has added maybe to the weight of discussions as to whether Lukaku is fat or overweight. I mean, Ben, can you kind of clear up what Tuchel has been saying so far?
I mean, we'll go back to a story that was initially released in Football Insider, and they said a source close to the club had said that the manager, Thomas Tuchel, had felt that Romelu Lukaku was overweight. They weren't able to give any specific, numbers in terms of how they thought, but the guideline between 3 and 8 kilos was a number that was levied against his weight in Italy, which is a fairly massive disparity between the two. But that was followed up by Tuchel, who then sort of came out and discussing, Romelu Lukaku's form since he's returned following injury and COVID. And he's saying that, when they're talking about returning to optimum levels of performance, he said that in his experience, those heavier players, those players who are carrying weight, and he didn't mean, that's just the bigger players, tend to recover a little bit slower.
And added to this, there is rumours from the Sport Bible that Lukaku will be fined €500,000 for his interview with Sky Italia. Maybe linked to that, it could be fitness issues as well. But my question to both of you, Ben, Raj, it seems unlikely in a modern game, but as a person who's not involved in the front line like you two, in terms of injury analysis, that a player would be allowed to get out of shape. But we do have to factor in he's had an ankle sprain, then he had COVID, and there is a marked loss of form, not just with him though, but also with the team. I mean, Raj, could a player really quickly put on, as Football Insider has said there, 3 to 8 kilograms?
Yeah, I mean, the upper range of that would be quite difficult, almost impressive if you put on 8 kilograms that quickly. But yeah, I mean, you can absolutely, especially if you have a player who has a propensity for maybe not, having the best nutrition, or we know from his days at United that he had issues with weight in the first place. And so if you fall back into some of those habits, especially when, like you said, with the high ankle sprain, you're not going to be doing as much activity because it is a lower body injury. With COVID, which is a respiratory infection, you also may not be doing as much activity for a little bit. So you can certainly see why he may have gained weight. And also, I think part of why he was in great shape when he was in Italy was his relationship with Conte. And that's really kind of when he gained a lot of that understanding for the need for fitness. And Conte's always been a coach. There's the whole thing about he outlawed mayonnaise and mustard when or so whatever it is, those stories come out. But he's always been known to be a coach who's all about players' fitness on and off the pitch and taking kind of all the necessary steps. So that could be factor into it as well.
I mean, could it come to body types as well, Ben? Quite often people have mesomorphic, exomorphic. Could he be what they call an endomorphic, or is this, where the realm of where we can actually analyze and that is just pure guesswork?
Yeah, I mean, look, what I want to see as well, in and around that COVID and that, high ankle sprain, what we also seen is we've seen limited minutes for Romelu Lukaku. In effect, he may have only had 4 to 5 weeks on the sidelines with that high ankle sprain. And yes, 8 kilos during that period, but it was over 2 months, in the reality of Premier League starts for Lukaku. And we've touched upon this before, particularly those teams who are involved in European competition where you're playing 2-3 games a week. You are not having the ability, even when fully fit and available, those players on the fringes of that starting 11, which Romelu Lukaku was, do not have the ability to really sit down and train within that competitive environment. They're not getting the minutes on the pitch. So any training and work done between games is merely maintenance. And like I say, it's maybe easy from the outside sort of looking in, but things like that can sort of creep up. Like I say, I'm with Raj. I think the club would have a red flag would have been, waving if Lukaku was pushing in and around a stone overweight at a particular point in time. So, I think when we talk about the reality of the situation and the day-to-day in a layman, may overweight, which is a stone and a half, is not a footballer's overweight, which I dare say, may only be, 2, 3, a couple of pounds. The difference at the highest level, those small percentages, you do everything you can to maintain those optimum levels. And of course, Romelu Lukaku, coming off the back of a 2-month plus stint on the sidelines, isn't going to come and hit the ground running, particularly, like I say, not when he's not getting those minutes on the training pitches as well.
Is it as well, Ben, unfair to kind of maybe criticise Romelu Lukaku then? Because as Raj has said there, during this time of COVID and with the high ankle sprain as well, he wouldn't been able to actually train all that much. So do we have to factor in that into the context of the situation, or is it, as I said at the start, I didn't believe that this would be possible, but modern footballers are paid a lot of money. Everything about them is managed. They have plenty of tests around the year. They sometimes have staff cook for them. This should not be happening. I mean, what kind of side of the fence you're on?
Well, look, yeah, I mean, we are speculating first and foremost. So, we've seen these stories. What I would say with regards to what you've mentioned, yes, the players are micromanaged to an extent these days. But, would we be having the same conversations with regards to Romelu Lukaku if A, he was scoring goals, and B, if Chelsea were winning? Would the issue with this Sky Italia interview be, such a huge talking point if Romelu Lukaku had returned, hit the ground running, and was scoring 2 and 3 times a game, and Chelsea were back to the team that had started the season so well?
The interesting thing for me as well, looking at the Chelsea team, I haven't drilled down into Lukaku's individual numbers, but the team itself, a lot of people are kind of saying that there has been a loss of form. And I think they have gone from that ability to turn draws into wins, losses into draws. But looking at their underlying data, there's not like a massive difference. It's more in the terms of at the start of the season, they were really overperforming expected metrics. And now they're about meeting it. Through the season, in terms of the underlying data, they've been the third best team and quite a distance between Liverpool and Man City and them. Raj, when I say the word unlucky, a lot of people go, that's not fair to talk about in football. But kind of maybe tying it into what has happened with Lukaku. Sometimes clubs, players, whatever, make their own luck. The fact that Lukaku has fallen out with him, that there is upset within the camp, can that also come in and affect luck in the sense that players have now lost their confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you don't feel as comfortable in a club, or your manager is calling you out in public, it's going to affect the way you feel about how you feel at the club. Look at his interview, right? You think a player who felt great would give that interview? Probably not. And so I think that, combined with the fact that he's used to a two-striker system, with Martinez prior, and so and now he's put into a one-striker system, so he has to now adapt to that. And then for Chelsea, they lost both their wing backs, right? And so with Chilwell, and then also with Reece James being out. So these are all adaptations the team has to have on the fly while also dealing with injuries. And so if Lukaku felt not as comfortable before, he might feel even more uncomfortable now. And I mean, we saw it recently with Hakim Ziyech, right? The way he responded after that goal, he didn't look very happy about it because Tuchel called him out too. So I think you just see some of these patterns and how they affect footballers for sure. I think the one thing I want to touch on in terms of Tuchel's comment on bigger players, right, responding, not coming back as quickly. There's a big difference between a player who's big due to their muscular development and a player who's just out of shape. Like before we came on, we touched on Adama Traore. He's likely heavier than most players because he's extremely muscular. And I don't think anyone would ever call him out of shape. And so that's a big distinction to make, but we don't know where Lukaku falls on that scale.
I mean, Ben, do you think that's a reading between the lines comment there then with Tuchel, or is there actually a phenomena where players do take a little bit more time to come back? The one that sticks in my mind is maybe Mikel Antonio. People kind of look at his massive legs and go, "Oh, aren't they amazing?" But he also does have a lot of hamstring problems. I mean, is that due to muscle imbalance? Is that due to his size, or is that just him alone and his body having those sorts of problems?
Well, I think you make a good point with Mikel Antonio, because they're almost like for like in terms of their body types and their stature. But by his own admission, Mikel Antonio inherently has been a bit of an ever-present, managed carefully by David Moyes this season. But there's an understanding, and almost my thoughts are there's fit and there's fit for purpose. And Mikel Antonio made that decision at the beginning of the season, or in the summer. Sorry, that he understood the role that David Moyes wanted to deploy him in, and to maintain that and to sustain those optimum levels throughout the season and maintain a level of availability, you have to change your lifestyle accordingly. You have to adapt nutritionally, your diet, your sleep, your hygiene, every aspect of your life needs to be perfect to maintain those levels. And that's been reflected, like I say, in Mikel Antonio's availability this season. Yes, he's been managed in and around those, Europa League games, but we're seeing a Mikel Antonio that inherently is available for David Moyes. And, when Thomas Tuchel is maybe talking about Lukaku maybe still thinking he's that player that's playing up front in a two. And maybe he feels and Tuchel feels he's not fit for purpose within this role, and he maybe needs to adapt and change, to fit into this system.
I just find it quite interesting as a person who does, the tactical analysis side. Why would Lukaku join Chelsea if he's not going to be happy in a one striker system? I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on that, Raj? To me, it seems unbelievable that he was not informed beforehand. Lukaku in that interview kind of made out that he was not informed beforehand and that it was going to be kind of adapted to him. It seems a bit of an odd situation there, aside from the weight situation.
Yeah, I have no idea on that, how that would not be kind of told to them in that regard. So that's a good question. It sounds like there's been a lot of miscommunication between Tuchel and some of his players, so that might be a consistent theme in all of this in that regard. So you would think that that's a pretty clear thing to say to a player. I want you to play in this, and therefore I want you to prepare for this, right? And so I don't know how that gets lost. That's a better question for him, maybe. I mean, or for Tuchel.
So maybe to kind of summarize from the situation then, because like I said at the start, we like to kind of take apart misinformation here, and we've gone through the ifs, buts, and maybes of just kind of assuming that Lukaku is out of shape or whatever. But Ben, do you think it's one of those situations where people can't really say that he is or he isn't unless the club or Lukaku kind of confirm it themselves?
I think we're dealing with minute, nuances between what we perceive as being overweight and what the clubs actually want a player to return at. They are measured in every single aspect of their life. They will have in optimal weight what they believe Romelu Lukaku will perform at his best, that weight. So, that could be a matter of, a pound or two. I don't think, he's going to be lax enough as a professional, or the club, in terms of their management, would allow a player to slip, that far, even if he was out of the, the common training ground and he was working remotely. These players are still measured. Their metrics are checked, so they're given plans to work away from the ground. So it's not like, they're sitting back and he's just spent the whole Christmas with his feet up, stuffing his face for Quality Street. The players now, long gone are the days where, it's 365 days a year. It's 24 hours a day. Players need to be on it if they want to perform and stay at the highest level. There are no corner cutting exercises here. So look, I think maybe, there's been a little bit too much made of this. And I'm a big fan of Lukaku on his day. I think he's a superb player. I think he brings a lot to the Premier League. And with regards to his return, I just felt as if maybe as well, look, he maybe felt he had something to prove. They had a few doubters. He left United under a little bit of a cloud. Maybe this was his opportunity to come back and shine and prove what he wanted to do is maybe replicate some of that form and that he had been shown out in Serie A. It could be as simple as that.
Raj, I want to throw maybe the final bit to you, because I know that you've analysed the Eden Hazard situation there, and that one was, as you said in videos, that he did actually go to Real Madrid overweight. So it's not completely impossible in the modern game. But do you think that the Lukaku situation, as Ben has said there, is being overplayed, whereas we know now that Hazard was a fact? I mean, what kind of was the context and the situation that allowed him to get into that out of shape state?
I mean, I think Hazard, it's been known even when he was in Premier League, multiple quotes that he was never the biggest stickler when it came to his own level of fitness or even training. And even from Madrid, there's been now quotes saying how he's now committed himself to that. So, I mean, there's still, even though players are monitored and everything, no club can force a player to do it for that, for 24/7, especially when you're a talent like Hazard. You tend to get away with a little bit more, but it does catch up to you eventually. As for Lukaku, I agree with Ben. I think it's probably very, there's probably a little, maybe if anything, 1 or 2 pounds, and it's very easy to have a go at the player right now. And so that's when you start to see some of these, people love to then jump on that when it benefits them in that regard. So it's probably overblown. And so, I think as he starts to play more, he gets more adapted to the Premier League again, right? Gets his fitness level up. I think you'll see that. And Tuchel also has a history of trying to use the media to motivate his players as well. So that could be part of it.
I mean, could this be Thomas Tuchel Operation Red Meat? Taking a bit of the flack from himself. I don't know if you get that one, Raj, but if you don't, Ben, then do you think that could be the situation there? It's a political move by Prime Minister Tuchel there.
I mean, quite possibly. Who knows? We will see. We'll see how Chelsea responded. They haven't been doing very well so far, so maybe he needs to rethink that strategy.
Yeah. So as an Arsenal fan, I say keep eating Lukaku. Don't let him tell you. Don't let Tuchel tell you anything, man.
Live your life as you want, Lukaku. be your beautiful true self. In terms of it then, I hope people enjoyed this one, going deep into another Premier League topic. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we've got so much good content here. We're here every week with Raj, analysing something important in the Premier League just for you. Make sure to comment below as well if you've got any questions, any data requests, any analysis that you want from us, especially in these shows. We do listen, we do read them, and we look forward to hearing from you. But for now, I'm going to wish you the best of luck, the best of health, and we will see you again very soon.